All right, welcome. Today we are digging into a fascinating secret, one that's really at the heart of science itself. It's a principle that helps explain why science is even possible in the first place. So let's dive right in.
You know, the world around us is full of these little paradoxes. On one hand, it's built from countless, chaotic, microscopic interactions. Just a storm of activity happening on the tiniest scales you can imagine.
And when I say complicated, it's truly staggering. Just think about it. The air in the room you're in right now has quadrillions of molecules, and every single one is on its own unique path. That is an almost infinite amount of detail.
But here's the thing. Physicists, biologists, engineers, they create these elegant, often shockingly simple theories that can predict the behavior of the whole system with incredible accuracy. So how do they do that? How do we get this beautiful simplicity out of all that overwhelming complexity? Well, that's the mystery we're going to try and solve today.
The answer, it turns out, lies in a concept that scientists call sloppiness. And honestly, the best way to get your head around it is to think about baking a cake. To get a good cake, a few things are absolutely critical. Scientists call these stiff parameters. We're talking oven temperature, the amount of flour. You get those wrong, you've got a disaster on your hands. But a whole bunch of other parameters are sloppy. A little more vanilla, a little less, an extra pinch of salt. At the end of the day, it really doesn't change the final cake all that much.
And here's the kicker. It isn't just about baking. Most complex systems, everything from the atoms in a magnet to the cells in our bodies, they behave just like this cake recipe. Only a few key parameters, or maybe combinations of them, really matter for the big picture behavior.
And what's really amazing is that when researchers started looking, they saw this exact same pattern over and over and over again. They looked at a huge range of scientific models in physics, biology, neuroscience, and it was there every time. It seems to be a universal rule for any complex system.
And the difference in importance between these stiff and sloppy directions, well, it's not small. It is absolutely astronomical.
In a lot of the models they studied, the most important combination of parameters was 10 billion times more influential on the final result than the least important one. That's not just a gap, that's a chasm.
So you're probably wondering, how do scientists actually figure this out? Well, they use this really powerful mathematical tool from information theory called the Fisher information matrix. You can think of it like a sensitivity detector. You can point it at any model, and it will tell you exactly which directions matter, the stiff ones, and which ones you can basically ignore, the sloppy ones. Okay, so let's see how this actually works in a real physics model. For our first case study, let's talk about diffusion. Just picture a single drop of ink spreading out in a glass of water.
Okay, so at the very first instant, every tiny detail about how each individual ink particle might jump, left, right, a little bit, a lot, all those microscopic details are independent and really important. But as you wait, as you just let time pass, the system gets sloppy. Those intricate details about the individual jumps, they just fade away. And the overall pattern becomes governed by just three stiff, big-picture properties: the rate of particle creation, the overall drift, and the diffusion constant. All that micro-complexity just vanishes.
Now, this whole simplifying process doesn't just happen over time. It also happens when we change our point of view, when we change our scale. And this is perfectly illustrated by something called the Ising model, which is a famous model used to describe how magnets work.
So, if you could shrink down and look at a magnet on the atomic level, you would see this incredibly complex web of interactions. Every tiny magnetic spin is being influenced not just by its immediate neighbors, but by neighbors that are farther away too. It is a really, really detailed and complicated picture.
So what happens if we coarsen our view? What I mean by that is, instead of looking at every single spin, let's say we only observe every other one, kind of like a checkerboard pattern. When we do this, something amazing happens. The microscopic complexity just melts away.
As we zoom out, the vast majority of all those complicated microscopic interaction details become incredibly sloppy. They just don't matter anymore for the pattern that we can see. Only two stiff parameters are left that are still important. One is related to the overall temperature, and the other is related to the external magnetic field. All that other detail just becomes irrelevant noise.
And this is the crucial takeaway. This isn't just a weird quirk of these two models. The researchers themselves conclude that this parameter space compression, as they call it, is a fundamental process. It is the very mechanism that allows science to have different layers of theories for different scales of reality.
So here's the bottom line. The universe, at its most fundamental level, is wildly complex.
But, and this is the big but, the way we actually observe it, either over a period of time or from a zoomed-out perspective, that process acts like a natural filter. It filters out most of the microscopic details, making them sloppy, and it leaves behind just a handful of stiff variables that actually matter. This is why we don't need to understand string theory to build a bridge. It is, quite literally, the secret to why science works at all.
And this leaves us with a final, really powerful question to think about. In all the complex challenges we face today, in economics and climate science and medicine, we are surrounded by what looks like just overwhelming, infinite detail. But if this principle really is universal, then hidden within all that complexity, there must be a few simple, stiff rules that truly govern the outcome, and they're just waiting for us to find them.